Greetings from Brother Stephen. I'm a disciple and witness of the Jesus Christ. To all the inhabitants of the earth, I present to you as a witness the gospel of the kingdom. In this lesson today, titled The Sixth Day Dinosaurs, we're going to be going over Genesis chapter 1, verses 24 and 25. We're going to have a short review before we get into the main subsection of scriptures, so you can it'll help you understand the point that I'm trying to make in this lesson. So we're going to start again back with the have a short review over that last lesson, the fifth day when Elohiym created fish and birds. I'm going to start this lesson off reading from my translation, beginning at Genesis chapter 1, verses 20 through 23. It says, "And Elohiym said, let the waters bring forth abundantly swimming nefish that have life, and birds that may fly above the earth in the open atmosphere of the sky. And Elohiym created great." So in the last lesson, I translated this word great, or replaced it with a synonym, enormous. But basically what I want to do in this lesson is I'm going to translate this word back to Hebrew, and then we're going to translate it to a modern English so people in this day and age can understand what it's saying. So the first thing we're going to do, again, we go to Genesis chapter 1, verses 21 on the blue letter Bible. We're going to just search Genesis 1:21, and we're going to take a look at the Hebrew reference number 1419, so we can see where this word great, what Hebrew word this word great is translated from. Now again, I did that for you already. This is H1419, and this is the Hebrew word that word great is translated from, and you will pronounce this gadal. Now basically what I have underneath here is a translator. Everybody has access to a translator. They all on the internet. This is a Google translator. I took this Hebrew word gadal and just translated it into English, and as you can see, large, and that's acceptable. Large, great, enormous, gigantic, these are all synonyms. So this word gadal can be translated to any of those words, but I want to find a word more specific so the people in this day and age understand exactly what it is talking about. So the first thing we're going to do from here is go look up the word large in a dictionary, and as you can see, it says of considerable or relatively great size, and that's what we're looking for because it's large, it's great. And just going through, and I got some of these synonyms highlighted so you can understand we're all on the same page. The King James Version, Oxford of 1769, uses great. You see, you have huge, big. I use the word enormous in my last study. And then as you can see, you still have words like massive, mammoth, vast, cosmic, giant, elephantine, titanic, and even this word elephantine, or elephantine, if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, forgive me, but that reminds me of one bird that was called that was named after an elephant, and this thing tower about see, the average man 6 feet. This thing averaged at about, I think it said about 10 feet if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, that was even one of the names of the birds, and some of the other birds was called a giant moe, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't use these words on a normal basis, so if I'm mispronouncing them, forgive me. But now another thing I just want to show you too is some of the antonyms is small, thin. Now the next I have here is large compared to what, because we're saying these animals was gigantic. They were large. And how would the writer know that they was large? Well, this what you and what are we comparing these large animals to know that they're large if everything in the beginning was gigantic and huge? Well, you have to remember that the writer of Genesis is writing this right before the children of Israel is going into captivity in Babylon. At the time he is writing this, people are not giants. And majority of the giant species have been extinct. They have died off. They don't run across giants on the normal or regular basis. So this word giant or great, large, that we're reading in the book of Genesis is coming from a writer during a time that everybody is much smaller. The animals are much smaller. The trees are much smaller. The fruit is much smaller. So now I'm just going to another word, and this word is dinosaur. And as you see, when we read this word dinosaurs, it says a fossil reptile of the Mesozoic area. The Mesozoic area is the same thing as the Jurassic area, or the same thing, this gigantic area. And in this era is when Elohiym originally created life on Earth. This is that era. That is the Jurassic era that we're reading in the book of Genesis. And it says, in many species reaching an enormous size. So this word dinosaur is actually a synonym that can be used and will let the readers know exactly what is taking place in Genesis when Elohiym is first creating living creature. They were all dinosaurs. Dinosaurs just don't mean people. They don't just mean mammals on dry land. Dinosaurs can be fish, they can be birds, they can be man, and that's basically the best translation that I can come up with. So when readers today is reading Genesis, they understand that this was the age of dinosaurs when God first created life on earth. The next thing I just have for you down here is the origin of the word dinosaurs. As you can see, it comes from the Greek word dinos, which means terrible, and saurus, which means lizard. So basically like a terrible lizard. But this is how we end up with the word dinosaur today. And this is a newly created word. It said mid-19th century. So that means this is kind of a word that was just created that they just started using. But it is a word that great in the book of first chapter in the book of Genesis can be translated into, because it is talking about enormous size animals. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going back to Genesis chapter 1 verses 20, and we're going to begin reading again. It says, and Elohim said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the swimming nefish that have life, and birds that may fly above the earth in the open atmosphere of the sky. And Elohim created dinosaur snakes. What is dinosaur snakes? Again, this just means enormous size snakes. And in the last lesson, I showed you the fossils of those enormous size snakes. So when you read this, when you put the translation dinosaurs in there, people can visualize exactly what is taking place in the book of Genesis. Again, and Elohim created dinosaur-sized snakes and dinosaur size. When it say every living nefish, it was all dinosaur size when he first created. And it says that swim, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged bird, all the winged birds, dinosaur size, after his kind. And Elohim saw that it was good, and Elohim blessed them, saying, breed and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning, and that's again, this is 120 hours, were the fifth day. So the first creation that is coming up out of the water. Now we have the main subsection of scriptures, which is Genesis chapter 1, verses 24 to 25. I'm going to read the King James Version, Oxford Edition first, and then read my version. I'm going to actually change this. I haven't changed this yet. So, again, this is the King James Version, Oxford Edition, which was falsely translated in 1769 by Oxford University. They plagiarized the King James Version Bible of 1611. It says, and God said, let the earth bring forth the living creatures after his kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth after his kind, and it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Now I'm going to reread that in an updated translation. And Elohim said, let the earth bring forth the living nephesh after his kind. If you have not been watching these videos, following from the beginning, nephesh is a word that we borrow from the Hebrew language. It is a long word. We go over this in the study titled Nephesh when we cover Genesis 1 and 20. The definition of nephesh is a physically mortal body not distinct from animals. In other words, we remove both creature and soul out of the Bible because it makes people think that animals physical body is something different from human physical bodies, or that the animals or that humans have a soul that is immortal and that is distinct from the animal's physical body, and it is not. So we take both creature and soul out because they are translated from the same Hebrew word, and that Hebrew word is nephesh, and we replace it with nephesh. So it's just a new word to add to your vocabulary. It is actually Hebrew, and again, it means a physical mortal body not distinct from animals. So when Elohim said, let the earth bring forth living nephesh, living physical mortal bodies. And again, these bodies are not distinct from animals. These bodies are not distinct from humans. And some of the synonyms we have is animal, beast, mortal, being. A human can be a nephesh. We have creature, individual, critter, all nephesh, and it's referring to that physical body. So again, and Elohim said, let the earth bring forth the living nephesh after his kind, domestic and rodents, and wildlife. And again, you have to remember this word dinosaur, it applies to these domestic, to these rodents, and this wildlife also of the earth after his kind, and it was so. And Elohim made the wildlife of the earth after his kind, and domestic after their kind, and all kind of rodents upon the earth after his kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. So basically, this word dinosaur that we're using to translate the word great from is not just applied to what we will say fish being created out of the sea. It is applied to the fish, it is applied to the birds he created, and it is applied to animals that he created on dry land. And all of these fish, bird, and animals, and this even include humans, are all nephesh. When God created it in the beginning, it was all enormous size, dinosaur size, and it is referring to all the living nephish or animals, creatures he created, which includes fish of the sea, birds of the air, and animals on dry land. Now, the last thing we're going to go to is we're going to jump to Job chapter 40, verses 15 to 24, because most people ask for, well, where's the scriptures in the Bible about a dinosaur? No, there are not a lot of scriptures about dinosaurs. The people who translate the Bible, of course, just did not find it important, and it's really not that important for your salvation. But in one of the previous lessons, when we talked about the creation of the fish, the fifth day coming out of the sea, we talked about the Leviathan, I might be pronouncing it wrong again. If I am, I'm sorry. The Leviathan, which was a dinosaur snake. And now we're going to read about verses that the Bible in the book of Job actually talk about dinosaurs. Verse 15 says, "Behold now Behemoth." Now we go to Job 40 and 15 and look that word Behemoth up in the Hebrew concordance. This word Behemoth comes from the Hebrew reference number 930. It says, "Which I made with thee." The reason he's saying which I made with thee, because the Behemoth was created on the same day humans was created. It was created on the sixth day. The next lesson we're going to be talking about the creation of Adam. It says, "He eateth grass as an ox." So what we're going to do, we're going to click on this H930 so we can see where this word Behemoth comes from. And this is the Hebrew word Behemoth. This is the transliteration of the Hebrew word. So as you can see, Behemoth is actually a Hebrew word. We borrowed this word from the Hebrews. This is a transliteration. This is a long word, which means we borrowed the word from the Hebrew language, just like we did with nephish. Nephish, we borrowed it from the Hebrew language because we don't have one word in English that clearly defines what creature or soul is. And now they're doing the same thing here with Behemoth. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to jump back to Genesis 1 and 24, so I can show you what a Behemoth is referring to. And again, I'm just reading this from the King James Version. And Elohiym said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creatures after his kind." And then it say cattle. Now this word cattle comes from the Hebrew reference number 929. So you have Hebrew 929, then you have Hebrew 930. And when you look up the Hebrew word, it's Behemoth. So this is what we know about this word Behemoth. Behemoth is not talking about a specific breed of cattle. It is talking about all cattle. And it is the same thing with this word Behemoth. This is not talking about one specific breed of dinosaurs. This is talking about a whole category of dinosaur, different species of dinosaur. And we're finna just read a little bit about it and see how it describes it. So again, I have this picture here that represent what the Hebrew word Behemoth means. It is describing all of these dinosaurs, not just one. Just like the word Behemoth is not describing one particular kind of cattle, but all the kinds of cattle that Elohiym created. So now we have verse 16. Again, we're just reading from Job chapter 40, verse 15 to 24, so we can get the description of the Behemoth, which is a dinosaur. Behold now dinosaurs. Lo, now his strength is in his waist, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moved his tail like a cedar. A cedar is a big tree. So in his tail waves like a huge tree. This is a dinosaur. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. Now, just to give you an idea what this is talking about, this is talking about the texture of the dinosaur skin, which would have probably been very similar to a crocodile. And as you can see, sinews just means like flesh, bone. Means like the flesh and the muscle, the tissue, kind of like the nervous system. Um, they're basically like that outward skin. And as you can see here, some of these look like stones even here on a crocodile. So it says his stones, or even like his armor, his skin, are wrapped together. If you look at a snake, it looked like his skin is braided together. So it's describing dinosaurs. His bones are strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. They can't be broken. He is the chief of the way of Elohiym. These are the biggest creatures Elohiym created. He that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. That means God can destroy these animals. Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. He lie under the shady trees, concealed by the branches and swamp. The shady trees cover him with their shadows. The willows, these are just huge trees too, by swamp water, of the brook compass him about. They cover him. Behold, he drink up a river and rush not. He thirsts, and he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. In other words, these how big these creatures are. That when they drink from the sea, you can obviously tell that the water levels are lower. That's how big these creatures are. He take it with his eyes, his nose pierced through traps. So again, just a quick review. Just scrolling back to the top. Basically, on the sixth day, when Elohim created animals on dry land, all of these animals was dinosaurs. They was of enormous size, and we have a few scriptures in the Bible to confirm that. Again, if you enjoyed listening to this lesson, you learned something, want to leave a comment, whether it's approving or disapproving with the teachings, you can subscribe to the you can subscribe to the Church of Jesus Christ YouTube channel, because I post these videos up there first, and then when I get a chance, I post them live on Facebook, and I have a Facebook group dedicated to these lessons as well, called the Church of Jesus Christ. And again, that is a Facebook group. Subscribe to the channel, join the group, and if for any reason you cannot find those on Facebook and YouTube, you can send me a message. That's my Facebook name, Lord Stephen, and I'll send you a link to those groups. So with that being said, this concludes this gospel.